Welcome to Bible Believers Fellowship in the ministry of bbfohio.com and this special two-part study entitled The Land Belongs to Israel. The Bible predicted in 2 Timothy 4:3 that in the last days men would not endure sound doctrine. Jesus predicted a global revival of anti-Israel anti-Semitism in Matthew 23:34. And we are told in Joel 3:1 and 2 that God will judge the world for scattering the Jews and dividing the land of Israel. So we're not surprised to see a growing number of professing evangelicals attacking Israel, slandering Christian supporters of Israel as Zionists, and spreading lies and distortions about the Jews and the nation of Israel. But the Bible still teaches that God has a plan for Israel, and the land belongs to Israel.
For the record, today is May the 14th, and it is 2014. And it is the 66th anniversary of the independence of Israel. We have a short video on that on our website, and I encourage you to watch that sometime. Maybe we'll show it here if some of you don't have internet access. But today we want to commemorate the birthday of Israel by looking at this study of the land. The land belongs to Israel. And that map you're looking at right now, this little brown area is what is Israel today. The red outlines what God said is supposed to belong to Israel. And one of these days, that will be Israel. That day is a-coming. Now, the reason why this is true is because God has established this fact, the land of Israel, going back to Abraham. He chose Abraham, and He promised to give Abraham a certain piece of land. And it's in Genesis 12 where we see this beginning as a promise in verses 1 and 2. Go ahead and read that with me. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee, and I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. This whole promise is about putting Abraham, at this point still called Abram, into a land. And if you come against that promise to Israel, you're cursed. And most preachers in America are cursed. Yeah. If you wonder why most preachers in America don't preach the gospel and most preachers in America are hirelings, it's because they're cursed. God didn't curse them first. They cursed Israel. Yeah. Genesis 12:3 says, And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And that still stands, as we're going to see. This promise from the very beginning extended to Abraham's seed. One of the first things you hear these false teachers and hirelings who come against this doctrine on Israel will teach is that it only pertained to Abraham. That's a lie. The Bible makes it clear right in the same chapter, verse 7. Says, And the Lord appeared unto Abram and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land. Look hard at that. Long and hard. It's unto his seed He will give this land. It's not just to Abraham. I've had guys say this stuff. I've had them posted on our website and the YouTube channel and everything. I'll come right back and show them that verse. They don't care. These guys don't care what the Bible says. They hate the Jews because they got a devil in them. And when you've got a devil in you, driving you, truth doesn't matter to you. And that's what we're dealing with. Now the borders of this land are described specifically in Genesis 15:18-19. It says, In the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, which He said was unto thy seed, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land. Said it a second time. You know, God says something one time, it's important. Says it twice, you better pay attention. Amen. He says, From the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. And then all these peoples that were there at that time. From the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates and all points in between. That's what it looks like. That's what Israel's borders are going to be when God finally puts His covenant back into place. And you can see the river of Egypt is the Nile, and the river Euphrates, and all points in between. Now, by contrast, this is what the United Nations have left to the Jews. That. This whole area here is land, but it doesn't belong to Israel anymore. It's called the West Bank. This is the Gaza Strip. And up here is Lebanon, and they have taken it all from the Jews. And it's a miracle just looking at that they can defend that. Divide and conquer. You've already divided. Look at that little tiny piece, and all they have to do, if God wasn't protecting them, that would already happen. Folks, if you can't understand, that is a divine work that they could exist. Now I want you to get this comparison etched into your mind. There it is. That's what they're supposed to have, and that's what they have.
Wow.
Now, even by the Balfour Declaration and the United Nations original agreement, all of this that's Jordan and all that, that's supposed to be Israel.
Wow.
Then Winston Churchill split it and gave this to, and that's a Palestinian state. When everybody says we need to create a two-state solution, they're a bunch of liars. They've already got a state. It's called Jordan. They're wanting another Palestinian state because they're liars. Another image you need to store in your mind is tiny Israel surrounded by her Muslim enemies. There's half the world, and if you can't see it, there's a country right here called Israel. This land, Muslim, all the darkest are, this 90 to 100% population is Islam. This right here, it's 75 to 90%, and 50 to 75%, and so forth. All this Muslim territory, and they're saying that it's wrong for Israel. It's wrong for Jews who've been hunted like animals, killed upwards of 6 million of them, killed in the Holocaust. They just need a place to live. And it's wrong for them to have this land that before Israel wanted it, they didn't want it. There's never been a Palestinian state on that land. There's never been an Arab state on that land. They're a bunch of liars. And they tell everybody, and Americans are a bunch of dumb thumps who sit there and believe this stuff they hear on the media. All you have to do is look it up, and you can see that there's never been an Arab state there. Even though you keep being told that the Israelis are occupying Palestinian territory. No, they're not. They're occupying what was British territory before they took it, and before it was Brit, it was Turkish.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just amazing. You can tell it gets me a little bit upset when I start dealing with this stuff. I can't stand liars. That's why I can't stand the United Nations. This promise extended to Abraham's son Isaac, not to Ishmael. In Genesis 17:19, read that with me. And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. People don't know what the word everlasting means. And they'll tell you that this covenant was temporary. And how many of you understand that there are times where a contract or a covenant can be suspended due to some extenuating circumstance, but yet it's still in effect?
Amen.
And whenever that extenuating circumstance changes, everything goes back to the way it's supposed to be in the covenant or the contract. This promise extended to Isaac's seed through his son Jacob and to his seed. If you jump ahead to Genesis 35:10-12, and God said unto him, Thy name is Jacob, thy name shall not be called any more Jacob, but Israel shall be thy name. And he called his name Israel. Read verse 11. And God said unto him, I am God Almighty, be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall be of thee, and kings shall come out of thy loins, and the land which I gave Abraham and Isaac, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land. Clear as can be. Huh? Yeah, it's just, that's why I tell everybody, this stuff isn't intellectual. It's so clear, it's easy to see, but it's spiritual. That's the problem. By the time of Moses, God is still talking about the land that He is giving to Israel. In Deuteronomy 1:8, behold, I've set the land before you, and go in and possess the land which the Lord sware unto your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give unto them and to their seed after them. Over and over and over, you'll hear people say the promise wasn't to the nation of Israel. Right there, over and over, it is to the nation of Israel. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and their seed. The full extent of the land promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and the nation of Israel has never been yet fulfilled. These guys especially call themselves preachers, who are claiming that this land promise was already fulfilled, are lying, and a lot of them just say that it's been done away with. That makes God a liar. God says it's going to happen, and it's going to happen. False teachers claim that the following text from the book of Joshua proves that the Abrahamic covenant of promised land has been fulfilled. They'll point to Joshua 21, verses 43 and 45 through 45. It says, and the Lord gave unto Israel all the land, which He sware to give unto their fathers, and they possessed it and dwelt therein. Oh, wait a minute. And the Lord gave them rest round about, according to all that He sware unto their fathers, and there stood not a man of all their enemies before them. The Lord delivered all their enemies into their hand. There failed not aught of any good thing which the Lord had spoken unto the house of Israel. All came to pass. Now, just to open your eyes a little bit of this, the same thing's true about me and you. We have everything God has promised us, but we haven't received it yet. Mm-hmm. That's the same thing you're looking at here. Mm-hmm. It's true insofar as Israel obeyed. But when Joshua died, Israel still fell far short of obeying God and taking all of the land. So when people point at Joshua, you need to jump to Judges. God did His part. Israel never did her part. And until both meet and both are fulfilled, then it hasn't been completed yet. Israel never held the land completely, and they never drove out all the Canaanites as the Lord commanded them. Wow. God did His part, but Israel still hasn't done their part. Israel has never held full control over all that land, never in history. You look through the history of Israel, they've never controlled everything from the river of Egypt to the Euphrates. The promise has not been fulfilled yet. After the death of Joshua, the book of Judges makes this fact clear. Judges 1:19, read it. And the Lord was with Judah, and He drave out the inhabitants of the mountain, but could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley, because they had chariots of iron. There you go. God promised, but Israel, and right here specifically, we're going to see several of the tribes, they're named. Judah couldn't drive them out. Now, it says because they had chariots of iron. That's the practical reason why they couldn't do it. But the bigger reason was because of apostasy.
Oh, yeah.
Lack of faith.
They not only lacked faith, but they fell into complete error and idolatry. So it was both proactive and or passive and active apostasy on their part. And that's why, again, when Joshua died, it was theirs for the taking. But they didn't take it. Judges 1 qualifies Joshua 21. If you can remember that. Anytime you're talking to anybody about Israel and they take you back to Joshua chapter 21 and point that Joshua chapter 1, or I'm sorry, Judges chapter 1 qualifies Joshua 21. And if you read Joshua 21 without its qualifier in Judges 1, you end up in error. I'm going to tell you, I heard this over and over from different preachers. The Bible is written in such a way that if you don't want the truth and you're looking to be able to embrace a lie, God's made it able for you to do it. If you want lies, you'll find them in the Bible. If your heart isn't right and you read that book, it's the worst thing you can do. And that's what people are doing today. A lot of the queers I talk to read that Bible more than the Christians do. But they spend their time reading it trying to find ways to defend their lifestyle and their sin. So it's disastrous. God did His part. Israel did not do her part. Judges 1 qualifies Joshua 21. And numerous other passages confirm this fact that Israel never did her part and the promise of God was never completely fulfilled. Just to give you a little overview, Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites that inhabited Jerusalem in Judges 1:21. Judges 1:27, neither did Manasseh drive out the inhabitants of Bethshan and her towns, etc. The Canaanites would dwell in that land. Fail. That's it. That's why we still hold to this covenant yet future, because Israel failed. In Judges 1:28 it says, and it came to pass when Israel was strong that they put the Canaanites to tribute and did not utterly drive them out. Fail. Judges 1:29 through 32, look at all this. Ephraim. Neither did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites that dwelt in Gezer. The inhabitants of Kitron and the inhabitants of Nehalal and the inhabitants of Akko and the inhabitants of Zidon, etc. For they did not drive them out. Fail. Over and over, Israel failed. Judges 1:33 and 34, Naphtali. Neither did Naphtali drive out the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh and nor the inhabitants of Beth Anath, but he dwelt among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land. Fail. Now, Psalm 106 confirms this, confirms our claim that Israel is yet to obey God and possess the promised land in full, and never drove the Canaanite out. But Psalm 106, verses 34 to 38, beginning verse 34, they did not destroy the nations concerning whom the Lord commanded them. People don't seem to get that that's part of the deal. They were to go in and destroy. If you want to know why that is, first of all, you have to understand the truth about the sons of God and the giants. You have to understand that these people sexually abused their children. They sexually abused their animals. They were sodomite, bisexuals, pretty much like a lot of Americans. And God said, that diseased culture must be annihilated. It's like if you're going to get rid of smallpox, you can't leave any of it around, or it'll just infect everybody all over again. And that's what that kind of sin is like. It says that they were mingled among the heathen. And in verses 37, 38, yea, look at it. This is Israel now. Israel says they sacrificed their sons and their daughters unto devils and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and their daughters, whom they sacrificed unto the idols of Canaan. And the land was polluted with blood. God said, destroy them or you'll turn around and you'll throw your own children in the fires of Molech. They didn't destroy them, so they turned around and threw their children in the fires of Molech. The book of Ezekiel says that they would go do that and then turn right around and go into the temple in Jerusalem. They would throw their children into the fire and then just a few hours later be in the temple in Jerusalem. This is the point of the entire Old Testament. Israel failed to obey and then fell prey to the Canaanites that were supposed to have been removed from the land. Thomas, did I tell you yesterday, for the first time since 2008, I did 50 push-ups. I meant to tell him that earlier, and I keep forgetting.
Because it ties right in with Israel.
Yeah. That's my segue. So again, that's the whole point of the entire Old Testament. Israel failed to obey and then fell prey to the Canaanites that were supposed to have been removed from the land. I know, this is all great information, but I know you're human. You're just like me. After a while, you're just like, okay. But you know what? It's got to be laid out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that thick, and yet people are still missing it. The land promise is repeated through the end of the dispensation of Mosaic law. And this is the Psalm of David, or one of the Psalms of David's time. I can't remember if Psalm 105 is actually a Psalm of David now off the top of my head or not. But verses 6 and 8 says, look at that. O ye seed of Abraham his servant, ye children of Jacob his chosen. Isn't the Psalms about 500 years after Moses? I was thinking that the Psalms are about 500 years, and then the Babylonian captivity is close to 500 years, or 400 and some years later from that. It's like 500, 400. So you can see it's like constantly, and centuries go by, and he's still saying it. A few more centuries go by, he's still saying it. O ye seed of Abraham, his servant, ye children of Jacob, his chosen. He is the Lord our God, his judgments are in all the earth. He hath remembered his covenant forever. But you know, we can't really take that to mean forever. That's probably just a interpolation, a scribal error. Or the better manuscripts say until, yeah. That's how they do it. Yes, in Hebrew, that is the Hebrew word, and it.
The hairball translation.
Hey, and the people sitting in the pew wouldn't know any different.
Right.
They're like, you sound like you're coughing up a fur ball. You must know Hebrew. Who am I to argue? I don't know Hebrew. That's what happens, isn't it, John? I mean, that's what happens. People sit there and think, whoa, that's over my head. I'll just let it go. He must know what he's talking about. Verses 9 through 11 says, which covenant he made with Abraham in his oath unto Isaac, and confirmed the same unto Jacob for a law, and to Israel for an everlasting covenant, saying, unto thee will I give the land of Canaan, the lot of your inheritance. And people will tell you that way back there in Joshua's day, it's done, it's over with. Why is he still promising it then? It's future tense. If this was fulfilled in Joshua's day, why would God be promising it in David's day for the future?
Yes.
You see the history of Israel in this little chart. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, 12 tribes, the Mosaic Law from about 1450. Here, I'll answer my own question here. Up to the time of the United Kingdom. So yeah, that's about 500 years. And then you had the divided kingdom after Solomon, Rehoboam, the fool. And then you come into the Babylonian captivity, which is Daniel, you know, the book of Daniel. And then the Judean occupation, which is right before the writing of the last books like Malachi. And it takes you right up to 70 AD and the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. And God has been repeating it over and over through the whole thing.
Amen.
He confirms it over and over and over. The land has yet to be fully in possession of Israel, and the prophets declare that this promise is future. Jeremiah 30 verse 3, read it. For lo, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will bring again the captivity of my people Israel and Judah, saith the Lord, and I will cause them to return to the land that I gave to their fathers, and they shall possess it. Now, it's funny because God put it here, Israel and Judah. I don't know why I didn't highlight that, but it says Israel and Judah because today a lot of these guys will say, oh, well, there was a divided kingdom, and Israel was taken off, and they became the Caucasians, and now they're in England. And that's what they say. And then Judah was the southern tribe, and they'll come up with some wild explanation as to why the Jews that are in there today aren't really from Judah, so that means they're not really Jews. And you come forward to the New Testament, and there's a Benjamite named Paul, who calls himself a Jew. So to be a Jew doesn't mean you have to be from the tribe of Judah, which is what these liars teach. Any of the tribes produced a Jew. And a Hebrew is another name they were called. Future tense. If this was fulfilled in Joshua's day, why would God be promising it in Jeremiah's day for the future? Around 600 BC. Jesus then, 600 years later, he prophesied of the destruction of Jerusalem, which came to pass in 70 AD. He prophesied it. We studied this in Mark 13 too. Read it. And Jesus answering said unto him, Seest thou these great buildings? There shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. That was fulfilled. Which is why I think the Western Wall is a scam. Talk about that some other time. Jesus prophesied there wouldn't be a stone left on another. There's no wall left. And it was fulfilled. And Jesus then prophesied of the return of the Jews to Israel with the parable of the fig tree to take place before the tribulation begins. Amen. Now I emphasize that because people are telling you that the Jews that are in the land today aren't real Jews and it's a big scam. Jesus said that the Jews would go back before this happened. It's the parable of the fig tree. We studied it in Mark 13, 28 and 29. It says, Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is near. That's telling you the fig tree comes and blossoms and becomes tender and puts forth leaves before the tribulation, which is what we see right now. So ye in like manner, when ye shall see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh, even at the doors.
Amen.
And that's what we're seeing right now, today. Those Jews in the land. It's future tense. If this was fulfilled in Joshua's day, why would Jesus be promising it in 30 to 32 AD for the future? Over and over and over, it wasn't fulfilled in Joshua's day. Israel is the fig tree. Hosea 9:10 says, I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers as the first ripe in the fig tree at her first time. It means from the very beginning, God has looked at Israel like the fig tree. The prophet Isaiah foretold of 2 regatherings into the land. He's writing in 586, and so one's going to take place after that, and then there's going to be a second one, which took place after this 70 AD dispersion, and it began in 1881 and was culminated in 1948. Isaiah 11:11, and it shall come to pass in that day, he's talking about the future, that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left. Second time. There was once, they brought them back just in time for Jesus. They were dispersed in 70 AD. They've been brought back a second time. Hosea prophesied that 3 days after rejecting Messiah, Israel would be regathered and revived. Hosea 6:2. After 2 days will he revive us. In the third day he will raise us up and we shall live in his sight. 2 days, 2,000 years. At the end of that time marks the third 1,000 years. That's the millennium. Amen. In the land. Amen.
Amen.
The regathered Jews will remain in unbelief. And this is key because people will say those Jews over there today are in unbelief. That can't be of God. God said it would happen.
There is an ancient book that remains a mystery to most of the earth's inhabitants. It tells us why we are here, reveals the mysteries of heaven and the horrors of hell, and the hero is God himself in our Lord Jesus Christ. Learn of the Ancient of Days by listening to Bible Believers Fellowship Saturdays at noon and Sundays at 9:30 p.m. on 91.5 Freedom FM.